In this episode, we talk about the archaeological attempts to locate the city of Dwarka Nagari as mentioned in the Mahabharata. We also talk about the 3-time TMC MLA Tapas Roy resigning from his post. But first we talk about India's first crewed space mission. Hi, my name is Rahel Philippos and you are listening to 3 Things, the Indian Express News Show. Last week, India announced the names of the 4 astronauts who will participate in the country's inaugural crewed space mission, the Gaganyaan. These astronauts are Group Captain Prashant Balakrishnan Nair, Group Captain Ajit Krishnan, Group Captain Angad Pratap, and Wing Commander Subhanshu Shukla. All 4 of these Indian Air Force officers have extensive experience as test pilots and are currently undergoing training for the mission. However, before they embark on this historic journey, the Indian Space Research Organization has planned an unmanned test flight to assess the readiness of the technology for the mission. In this segment, the Indian Express's Anonna Dutt joins my colleague Niharika Nanda to tell us more about the mission.
So, Anonna, can you begin by sharing with us what exactly is the Gaganyaan mission?
So, the Gaganyaan mission is the first human space flight for India and our space agency. It will send 2 or 3 astronauts up in a low Earth orbit, so around up to 400-kilometer orbit around the Earth, where these astronauts will conduct some microgravity experiments and all, and come down back to the Earth. So far we had missions where we have sent regular satellites which are needed for the telecommunications and mapping, etc. We have sent scientific satellites like AstroSat or Chandrayaan. And this will be the first time that we will add a human component to space missions. That is what is envisioned under the Gaganyaan mission.
And what kind of a launch vehicle is being used for this mission and what is special about it?
So basically, the launch vehicle with the cryogenic upper stage GSLV Mark III, which is now known as LVM-3, has been selected for this mission. But we cannot use any normal rocket that we send our, other satellites on board. This is because they would be carrying humans. So the conditions have to be made such that it is fit for humans. So any launch vehicle which will be carrying humans has to be human rated, where you can prove that, the vibrations that are felt during the liftoff or during the stage separations, then the kind of environment that will be maintained inside this rocket, all of this will be compatible with the survival of humans. So other than that, a lot of redundancies are built into these systems so that even if there is some sort of failure of some mechanism, there is something to rely on. So that is what has been going on for the past 3 years, and the LVM-3 has now been human rated. In fact, it has flown with some of the human rated components already in 2 missions where they launched the OneWeb satellites around the Earth.
So as we know, last week PM Modi announced the names of the 4 astronauts who will be a part of the Gaganyaan mission. Do we know how were they trained for this mission?
So the astronauts had 2 types of training essentially. The first is the generic spaceflight training, which they received at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center in Russia, where they learned the various, how does it feel to be in the space, the weightlessness and things like that, the generic things that you need to know if you are in space. They also learned about survival in very extreme situations like in the Arctic or in the sea or in mountainous terrains in preparation for the mission. After this training in Russia was over, they have been receiving training in India for basically mission-specific training. So in that, the astronauts have been learning specifically about the crew module that will be used for Gaganyaan mission. So they are studying about the different keys and switches that are there and how to operate them, how it would feel to operate in the space. they are getting a hang of running these things. Along with that, of course, they have to undergo a lot of physical training. They're doing yoga as well as, a lot of psychological training as well to prepare them to stay in isolation in space.
And Anona, we gathered that before the main Gaganyaan mission, a few trial missions will also take place. So can you talk to us about that?
So the Gaganyaan mission, before we carry the humans to space, we have to ensure that all the systems are in working order. They are all okay to support human life in it. So first of all, these systems would be tested in the Gaganyaan 1 mission, which will be an unmanned flight, where the crew module, this is essentially where the seats for the astronauts is placed, they will test it with an unpressurized module. So basically it will not have the environment that is needed to support life. But this mission will test all the other systems, like what happens when you go up, if there is, some sort of emergency, how do you escape that? And then when you splash down back on Earth, it would be in an ocean. So are you upright? Is the module in the right position for recovery? All of this system, the parachute system, will be tested during this mission. There could be other test vehicle missions in between to test different components of the entire mission. This will be followed by a second Gaganyaan G2 mission, which will also be unmanned, but which will have a pressurized crew cabin. So it will have the atmosphere which is needed to support the astronauts, like humidity control, temperature control, the oxygen levels, etc. All of this will be there in the second mission, and that will also carry a robot called Vyom Mitra, which will record data to see how the module is functioning and whether everything is in order and everything is fine for human life. So that would be the second mission. Only after we complete a successful second mission would there be the first human spaceflight, which would be H1. India is targeting the H1 launch for 2025.
Also, Anona, one imagines that sending humans into space is not an easy task. So what kind of challenges is ISRO dealing with to make it happen?
So unlike other missions which we have been doing for years, and even when we build more sophisticated satellites, the principles that govern those missions are essentially similar. So you're not paving a new road for every mission. But here we do not know a lot. We have never attempted this. So ISRO is working from the scratch, and like everything is new. So they have to test everything, try everything out and see what works, what doesn't work. So there will be a lot of testing before we are sure enough that, okay, this is fine and this can carry the astronauts to space and bring them back safely. So all of this is, of course, going on right now. Other than that, when we are talking about human missions, we also have to create an environment inside this satellite. So the module that will circle the Earth is essentially a satellite. But unlike other satellites, you have to maintain pressure inside that. You have to maintain the oxygen levels. You have to maintain a certain environment. And for this, we will be creating for the first time the environment control and life support system. Again, this will also be tested on the unmanned flight first to see how it's working. Other than that, you have to send like food, water, etc. for the astronauts when they are up in space. So that is another challenge. We've never had space-worthy food so far. So that is also something that research agencies are working on.
Also, do we know why ISRO decided to do a crew mission? Is it for the achievement alone, or can it have other advantages to it?
So, of course, this is to demonstrate, first of all, that we are capable of human missions. We haven't done any human missions so far, unlike, say, US or Russia. So, of course, that would be demonstrated with this mission. But other than that, also, this is essential for ever if you plan to do like interplanetary travel or going to other celestial objects such as the moon. It is essential to first get to the orbit. So that is also something that would be demonstrated with the Gaganyaan mission.
So like you just mentioned, a future mission to the moon might happen as well. So are we seeing a renewed interest in moon missions now?
So, of course, there is a renewed interest in the moon. China has said that they would be sending humans to moon. So has the US in their Artemis mission. And this renewed interest has come up after so many years after Apollo missions because of the discovery of water. Chandrayaan-1 was actually the first to confirm the presence of water molecules on the moon. And since then, a lot of mapping has happened on the moon. We know what kind of minerals, etc. are present on the moon. And this renewed interest is because if in the future you have to attempt any sort of interplanetary mission, moon is like the pit stop. You can refuel there, you can get water from there, etc. for a onward mission. Other than that, moon also has a lot of minerals that can be mined. So all of this together has renewed the interest in sending humans to moon.
And next we talk about the ancient city of Dwarka. Last month, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in Gujarat, specifically in the pilgrimage town of Dwarka, to inaugurate several infrastructural projects, including the Sudarshan Setu, India's longest cable-stayed project connecting Okha town with the island of Bet Dwarka. During this visit, he also went scuba diving off the Panchkui beach coast and performed underwater prayers at the site of what's considered to be Dwarka Nagari, the mythological kingdom of Lord Krishna as depicted in the Mahabharata. Now, for years, various archaeological attempts have been made to locate Dwarka as mentioned in mythological text. However, the city has so far evaded experts. In this segment, my colleague Shashank Bhargav speaks to the Indian Express's Adrija Roychowdhury about the attempts that have been made so far and the challenges that archaeologists have faced.
Firstly, Adrija, does the present-day Dwarka find any resemblance to the Dwarka that has been mentioned in the Mahabharata?
So it's a little hard to say because there are a number of places in modern-day Gujarat that take the name of Dwarka. So apart from the Dwarka town, which is also part of the Krishna pilgrimage circuit, there is Bet Dwarka, then there is Mool Dwarka, and all these places are within 200 kilometers or so, lying scattered across the Saurashtra region. But the association of the present-day coastal town of Dwarka with the one mentioned in the Mahabharata is because of two reasons, as I would say. One, due to the presence of the Dwarkadhish temple, which is dedicated to Lord Krishna, and that is situated in Dwarka. And also there are, several ancient and medieval era saints like Shankaracharya, Meera, Ramdas, who have in their writings mentioned this to be the Dwarka of the Mahabharata. So with time, this place became a very essential part of our cultural geography.
Right, and talk about what attempts have been made in the past to find the exact location of Dwarka as mentioned in the mythological text.
So around from the early 20th century onwards itself, there were several attempts to locate Dwarka. And initially these attempts were based purely on ancient literature and they were dependent on the works of other scholars. For instance, you had someone called F.E. Pargeter, who was a British civil servant and a judge at the Calcutta High Court. And in 1904, he had translated the Markandeya Purana. And on the basis of that text, he had reached the conclusion that Dwarka was located on the Raivataka mountains. This Raivataka mountain is again mentioned in the Mahabharata, but in present times it is identified as the Girnar Hills, which is close to Junagadh, which is about 200 kilometers away from Dwarka. Then another historian, A.S. Altekar, he in the 1920s, he had noted that Dwarka might be submerged in the sea as the Mahabharata mentions. Then there were other historians and archaeologists who located Dwarka to be the same as the present day town. Then from the 1960s onwards, the attention shifted from literature to finding material evidence to locate Dwarka.
Right, and in that regard, a number of excavations have been made by different archaeological departments in the country. So talk about the kind of things they have revealed.
The first such attempt was made by the Deccan College in Pune, and that was in collaboration with the Gujarat government's Department of Archaeology. And this was in the 1960s, 1963 to be precise. They excavated a very small area next to the Dwarkadhish temple. And it had to be a small area because it's a highly populated region, so it is not possible to excavate a very large space over here. And they found artifacts that suggested that the area could have been inhabited for the last 2000 years or so. So while this did not exactly support the view of this legendary city, there was, the quest continued to find whether there can be a more ancient city over here. Then in 1979, the ASI conducted another round of excavation. This was under the archaeologist S.R. Rao. And again, this was in the area around the Dwarkadish temple during the development of this site. They found remains of 3 older temples and something called the lustrous redware pottery that could be dated to the mid-2nd millennium BC. So this now triggered further interest, and there was speculation that there might be a city submerged in the ocean. And, consequently, in the next few years, excavations were carried out underwater.
And did the underwater excavation reveal anything about the city? Did they find any kind of evidence?
Yes, so from the 1980s onwards, there was this long underwater archaeological quest that was carried out by a team of marine archaeologists and scientists from the National Institute of Oceanography, which is in Goa, to locate this, legendary sunken city in the Arabian Ocean. Now, I spoke to one of the archaeologists in the team, Sila Tripathi, who told me that they found a large number of artifacts like stone anchors, metal artifacts, pottery, marble statues, etc. Pieces of marble statues and things like that. And when it came to dating them, they compared these findings to findings from nearby archaeological sites. So as far as the Dwarka archaeological site is concerned, it is an entire region. So there are other places like Beth Dwarka and Nageshwar. These also are part of the same region. So what these marine archaeologists had done was compared the underwater findings from Dwarka to the archaeological artifacts that had been found in Beth Dwarka, which is about 30 kilometers away. And Beth Dwarka is a small island located over here. And at Beth Dwarka, they had found artifacts dating to the late Harappan period, which is around 1900 to 1300 BC. And since the Dwarka findings were very similar to the ones found in Beth Dwarka, they concluded that they were from the same period, the late Harappan period. And Dr. Tripathi also mentioned to me that many scholars accept that the late Harappan period was the period of the Mahabharata. But again, this dating of the Mahabharata and making this comparison is quite contentious. Again, as per the writings of the present day ADG of ASI, the Additional Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, he had in one of his papers mentioned that the findings of the NIO, they were not very clear and they lacked consistency. So, between 2005 and 2007, the ASI's underwater archaeological team carried out a separate round of excavation. Again, this was an underwater excavation, and they found artifacts underwater which they said that they cannot date them exactly.
And is it because finding and dating material found underwater is just more challenging than, say, finding something buried underground?
Yes, because when it comes to underwater artifacts, they are exposed, not exactly, they're not located deep underground, undisturbed for thousands of years. So if it's something on the ocean bed, this is exposed in the sense that, there can be artifacts that come from nearby areas or through the waves of the ocean. It is very difficult to say that one particular artifact is much older than the other. So, for instance, there is a possibility that you find a bunch of coins in underwater. One coin might belong to the Chola period. The other one might be from 2024. So, there is no clarity as to how to date them. And hence, they had decided that they had concluded that it is not possible to date the underwater artifacts at all.
And Adrija, you earlier mentioned how contending that Mahabharata originates from the late Harappan period can be contentious. But do we have a sense about when this text first came into existence?
So the thing is that, when it comes to these epics, what scholars have again and again noted is that, these were written over a course of many, many years, be it the Mahabharata or the Ramayana, and it is quite possible it is not just one person who had written these epics. Over a period of hundreds of years, several people have added, and, that is how these epics were written. So it is very hard. In fact, the origin date of the Mahabharata in itself is contentious. There is a debate among scholars as to, which is the exact date, which is why I mentioned that, the late Harappan period being the period of the Mahabharata is a contentious aspect. Even though Dr. Tripathi had mentioned this to me and I have quoted him in my article, it is also a fact that it is not a very clear remark to make that the late Harappan period is the period of the Mahabharata, because scholars have disagreed and debated over the dating of the Mahabharata itself for years now, and there is no general consensus on this as of now.
And Adrija, considering we are still uncertain about when this text first originated and the changes it went through, how challenging does it then become to find the location of a place that was mentioned in it?
See, first and foremost, when it comes to places located in mythological texts, we need to keep in mind that they may or may not have been real cities and places at all. Okay, they might be fictitious places as well. Now, over the years, many cities in the Indian subcontinent have taken names inspired from mythology. So, like I mentioned, in Gujarat itself, there are a number of Dwarkas. There is not just one Dwarka. There is Bet Dwarka, there is Mool Dwarka. And similarly with other mythological cities as well, there are other places that are inspired by the names from mythological texts. Now, over the years, maybe because of the presence of a certain temple or the way people have started putting their faith in a particular city, that particular region becomes very much a part of our religious geography. So, what often happens is that, when archaeologists also go to excavate any of these regions, you might find some bits and pieces that fit the puzzle. Not completely, but it gives some clues perhaps. And then you make further hypothesis that, okay, maybe there is a possibility of a submerged city over here, basis the fact that, we found 3 more temples. But it is very hard to get an exact answer as to, this is the city that Krishna built. This, I think it is a lot harder to find just basis, artifacts and a few odd findings we have which happen to fit into the puzzle.
And Adrija, can you give examples of other attempts that have been made to locate places mentioned in Hindu mythological texts?
So, the best example is Ayodhya, of course, which is Ram's birthplace. And there have been multiple excavations and attempts to locate the Ayodhya and to come to the conclusion that this is the Ayodhya, the site at Uttar Pradesh is the one where Ram was born. And then there is, the Purana Killa is another example, which there's excavation that happens here almost every few years that the ASI conducts. Because again, Purana Killa is associated with the Mahabharata. And then there is Mathura, the Gyanvapi mosque complex that is currently, under a lot of debate right now. Again, because of Varanasi's mythological significance in Hindu culture, there is an attempt to again find material evidence. And it's not just the central government's ASI, there's also, if you see, each of the state governments have their own archaeology departments. So a very good example of this would be the ongoing Keeladi excavations in Tamil Nadu, which again, is associated with the Sangam literature period. And Sangam literature again is very significant in Tamil consciousness. So again, we see, there is the attempt to find material evidence for a purely mythological text.
And in the end, we talk about the 3-time Trinamool Congress MLA Tapas Roy. Yesterday, Roy tendered his resignation to the West Bengal Assembly Speaker Biman Bandyopadhyay, marking what many perceive as a setback for the ruling TMC in Bengal ahead of the upcoming Lok Sabha polls. Roy currently holds the position of Deputy Chief Whip of the ruling party in the Assembly and serves as the President of the TMC's Damdam Barakpur Organizational District. Addressing media representatives outside the Assembly, Roy said, and I quote, "Trinamool Congress is not for me anymore. I am a free bird. I will let you all know about my next course of action later," unquote.
এই সমস্ত কথার কোনো একটিও উত্তর আমি দেব না। আমি কি করব না করব সেটা আমার সিদ্ধান্ত। এখন আমি ফ্রি বার্ড। আমার সিদ্ধান্ত আমি কি করব না করব।
Roy's resignation took place while efforts were being made by the state's Education Minister Bratya Basu and TMC leader Kunal Ghosh, who hurried to his residence yesterday morning in a last-ditch attempt to appease him and dissuade him from resigning. During the press conference, Roy expressed his disappointment that neither he nor his family received any communication from his party following the ED raid on his home on January 12th. He also informed reporters that the party had been grappling with a lot of corruption and that the Sandesh Khali incident had troubled him.
The situation arises out of প্রতিদিন যে দুর্নীতি কোনো একটি শব্দ বিধানসভার ভেতরে বাইরে বা যেখানে গেছি সেখানে দুটো মিছিলের সামনে পড়েছিলাম গাড়ি নিয়ে সেখানে সেই পরিস্থিতি আমাকে বড় নাড়া দিয়েছে তারপরে সন্দেশখালীর ঘটনা এই সমস্ত রয়েছে এগুলো আমাকে দীর্ঘদিন ধরে নাড়া দিয়েছে।
According to a report by the Indian Express's Ravik Bhattacharya, Roy felt disheartened as the Chief Minister defended Sheikh Shah Jahan in the Assembly but remained silent on his behalf. Meanwhile, speculations are rife that Roy may soon join the BJP and potentially contest against sitting TMC MP and parliamentary party leader Sudeep Bandyopadhyay for the North Kolkata seat. When questioned about Tapas Roy and the possibility of him aligning with the Saffron Party, State BJP President Sukanto Majumdar told Ravik that politics is a realm of possibilities. However, he added that there is currently nothing to disclose to the media regarding the matter. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. It was written and produced by Shashank Bhargav and Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone who you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcast and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.